All right, welcome to your personalized deep dive. You sent us this book, Master the Game, How to Handle Beta, Alpha, and Every Man in Between.
By Yawboy Rick.
Yeah, by Mac Rich, aka Yawboy Rick. And, well, we're going to unpack it together.
Yeah.
This book, it's a guide to, well, let's say, navigating male psychology. Whether or not you agree with this whole approach, I think it offers a pretty fascinating look at power dynamics, relationships, all that.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll be focusing on the core concepts here and the most intriguing takeaways, definitely not endorsing every single tactic.
Right.
Consider it a glimpse into like a controversial social experiment with plenty of room for, your own critical thinking.
Exactly. Understanding the ideas, not necessarily adopting them.
Exactly. So the book kind of kicks off with this bold premise, right? The male ego, regardless of like outward personality, is built on this need for power, control, recognition.
Okay.
It argues that this drive, it influences men's behavior, especially in relationships.
This aligns with, a lot of traditional views of masculinity that kind of emphasize competition, achievement.
Right.
Think about like classic psychological theories that suggest men are often socialized to value those things. However, super important to remember, this is a generalization. Every individual is different,
Right.
shaped by unique experiences.
And the book does acknowledge those nuances.
Yeah.
It gets specific about different, like, types of men, right?
Yeah.
Like alphas, betas. But it also recognizes there's a whole spectrum in between.
hmm
What I think is interesting is how it suggests tailoring your approach based on these perceived personality types.
Yeah, this is where things get a bit tricky, venturing into the realm of manipulation.
Oh, yeah.
The book even uses that term openly, arguing it's not always a bad thing.
Right. It talks about this feed and starve technique
Yes.
for the male ego.
hmm
Basically, you give a man just enough validation to keep him interested,
Okay.
but then strategically pull back to keep him on his toes.
Right.
The book gives an example like complimenting a man's intelligence and then subtly shifting the conversation to create a sense of doubt, make him work harder for your approval.
That example highlights how the book blends, I think, psychology
Yeah.
and strategy.
Right.
Think about it. By withholding validation, you're tapping into the fear of losing something valuable. It's a bit like training a dog with treats.
Yeah.
You reward the behavior you want, creating that cycle of seeking approval.
Right.
It can be very effective, but raises some ethical questions.
Right.
Is this type of manipulation ever justified, even in the name of love?
That's a big question for you to ponder.
Yeah.
And the book goes even deeper, claiming beta males are especially susceptible to this kind of approach,
Okay.
describing them as loyal, eager to please, easy targets because they crave validation and avoid conflict.
Right. It paints a picture of someone who might be more sensitive, perhaps a bit more accommodating in relationships.
Exactly. And the book provides specific examples of how to, well, manage a beta male. It suggests complimenting his thoughtfulness, making him feel special,
Okay.
even framing requests in a way that makes him feel like he's fulfilling his purpose
Right.
by meeting your needs.
This approach highlights the importance of individual needs.
Yeah.
Someone who genuinely values thoughtfulness might respond positively to that kind of praise.
Right.
But assuming that about an entire personality type is risky, it's about recognizing individual nuances rather than applying blanket labels.
Absolutely. Now, the book, then it gets into how to handle, like, the infamous players, those
Yeah.
charming men that seem to, just avoid commitment.
Yeah.
It suggests acting unimpressed, mirroring their tactics, essentially making them chase,
Interesting.
even using their fear of losing you as leverage.
This strategy is about reclaiming power, right?
Yeah.
It encourages recognizing patterns of manipulative behavior and, well, turning the tables.
Right.
But it begs the question, do you want a relationship built on these kind of mind games? Can genuine connection thrive in that environment?
Those are great questions for you to think about. What about the rich and powerful? Are they immune to these tactics?
So the book claims even they have vulnerabilities.
Okay.
It suggests challenging their confidence, making them earn your attention,
Okay.
proving they're more than just their money.
So even with the rich and powerful, it's about finding those cracks in the armor.
Think of it this way. Wealth and status can be a shield and a weakness. The book argues that these men might seem untouchable, but they still crave genuine connection and validation, just like anyone else.
So it's about using their desire for connection to your advantage.
In a way, yes, but the book emphasizes making them work for it.
Right.
It suggests reframing their spending as an investment in the relationship.
Okay.
Makes them feel like they're getting something valuable in return, not just buying affection.
Clever. It plays on that human need for reciprocity.
Right.
We like to give back when we feel like we've received something meaningful.
Yeah.
But this raises an important question. Can true intimacy exist when you're constantly strategizing and manipulating?
That's a question, yeah, each reader has to answer for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It brings us to the next section of the book, navigating long-term relationships.
Okay, let's dive into that. The book suggests setting rules early, controlling validation, being a source of stability, but also introducing challenges to keep him on his toes.
It's almost like a carefully orchestrated performance, where you're constantly managing his perceptions and reactions.
Right.
It brings up a crucial point, like, at what point does this become exhausting?
Yeah.
Where does genuine connection fit into all this strategizing?
Right. The book does acknowledge men will push back, even rebel against this type of control. It even provides advice on how to handle these situations.
Yeah, instead of direct confrontation, the book recommends using silence as a tool.
Okay.
Imagine this. You stay calm, creating a sense of discomfort that forces him to reflect on his actions. It essentially turns the tables, making him feel the weight of his behavior.
So it's a power play within a power play. Interesting. But is that really winning or just delaying the inevitable conflict? Healthy relationships need communication and compromise, not just tactics.
Exactly. And that's where the book's advice gets really interesting.
Okay.
It dives into the idea of using his rebellion to reassert your dominance,
Wow.
almost like turning a challenge into an opportunity.
Wait, what? Tell me more about that.
Well, the book suggests that instead of reacting emotionally to his rebellion,
Right.
you use it as a chance to reestablish control.
Okay.
It talks about using positive reinforcement when he behaves the way you want, almost like, training a pet.
So you're saying it's about strategically rewarding good behavior to encourage compliance.
Precisely. It even suggests using reverse psychology, subtly implying the opposite of what you want.
Right.
Knowing his instinct to rebel might lead him right where you want him to be.
Wow, that's pretty manipulative. But I can see how it might be effective, especially with someone who's prone to challenging authority.
It's definitely a bold approach,
Yeah.
but it highlights the book's central theme, using strategic manipulation to achieve your desired outcome in a relationship.
But is that kind of approach really sustainable in the long run? Doesn't it create an environment of distrust and power struggles?
Those are excellent questions, and ones that the book attempts to address in its later chapters.
Okay.
It acknowledges that maintaining this type of control requires constant vigilance and a willingness to adapt your strategies as the relationship evolves. It even goes so far as to suggest that you should aim to become indispensable to him, weaving yourself into the fabric of his life in a way that makes you seem irreplaceable.
That's a pretty high bar to set.
Yeah.
How does the book suggest achieving that?
Well, it talks about tapping into the scarcity principle.
Okay.
The idea is that people value what they believe they can't easily have.
Right.
So the book encourages making your attention feel rare and special, even in a long-term relationship.
Okay, I can see how that might work in theory. But how do you actually put that into practice?
The book offers some specific examples, such as occasionally withdrawing your attention, creating a sense of longing and anticipation. It also talks about the importance of emotional anchoring, creating powerful emotional experiences that he'll associate with you. This helps foster a feeling of exclusivity and deep connection.
Interesting. It's almost like you're creating a psychological dependence on you, a sense that he can't get this kind of connection anywhere else. But doesn't that border on, emotional manipulation?
It's a fine line for sure.
Yeah.
And it raises ethical questions about the nature of influence in relationships.
Yeah.
But the book argues that this kind of strategic approach is simply a way of maximizing your power and ensuring that your needs are met in a relationship.
It definitely makes you think about the boundaries between, healthy influence and outright manipulation.
Mhm.
But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's take a step back and revisit a key point from the book.
Okay.
The importance of maintaining the illusion of equality, even when you're the one subtly pulling the strings.
Right. It emphasizes making him feel like he's still in control, even when you're, cleverly guiding his decisions and actions.
The book even suggests, sharing in decision-making, allowing him to think he's calling the shots while you skillfully steer the process toward your desired outcome.
It's a delicate balancing act for sure.
It is. But before we delve further into those advanced tactics, let's pause here and take a breath. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground so far.
Yeah.
From decoding the male ego and handling different personality types to navigating the complexities of long-term relationships and the ethics of influence.
It's certainly a lot to process. And before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I think it's important to give you a chance to reflect on what we've discussed.
Exactly. What are your initial reactions to the book's advice? What stands out to you the most? We'll be back in a moment to wrap up our deep dive into Master the Game.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Master the Game. I mean, when we left off, we were talking about that delicate balance of power in relationships and how the book, kind of encourages women to subtly guide their partner's decisions while maintaining the illusion of equality.
It's a fascinating concept, isn't it?
It is.
Almost like a mental chess game,
Right.
where you're thinking several moves ahead. The book even suggests using specific techniques to achieve this, like strategically withdrawing your attention to create a sense of longing and anticipation.
Right. It emphasizes that even in a long-term relationship, a little bit of mystery can go a long way.
Oh, yeah.
Suggests things like occasionally being unavailable, pursuing your own interests, basically keeping him guessing.
Right. Yeah.
The book calls this the scarcity principle, the idea that people value what they believe is hard to get.
Exactly. It taps into that primal desire, for what we can't easily have.
Right, right.
The book argues that by making your attention feel rare and special, you increase your perceived value. It also encourages creating powerful emotional experiences that he'll associate with you, something it calls emotional anchoring.
So it's not just about physical presence, but also about creating a unique emotional connection that he can't find anywhere else.
Precisely. The book suggests doing this by sharing intimate moments, being vulnerable with your feelings, and basically becoming his confidant.
Okay.
It even suggests, subtly shaping his identity, affirming the traits you want him to embody, almost like molding him into the ideal partner you envision.
That's pretty powerful stuff. But it also raises some ethical concerns, doesn't it? At what point does, influencing someone's identity cross the line into manipulation?
It's a valid concern, and one that the book doesn't shy away from addressing. It acknowledges that these techniques can be used for good or for bad,
Yeah.
and ultimately it's up to the individual to decide how they want to wield this knowledge.
Okay. So let's move on to another interesting aspect of the book, the idea of using physical intimacy as a tool for influence.
Ah, yes. The book delves into this quite extensively, emphasizing the importance of keeping things fresh and exciting in the bedroom. It encourages exploring new experiences, playing with power dynamics, and tying physical intimacy to emotional connection, making each encounter feel meaningful and unique.
It's almost like it's encouraging women to become masters of seduction, not just in the initial stages of a relationship, but, throughout its entirety.
Exactly. The book argues that physical intimacy is a powerful tool for bonding and creating a sense of deep connection. It suggests using it strategically to strengthen the relationship and keep him coming back for more.
But isn't there a risk of turning something that should be spontaneous and genuine into a calculated performance?
That's a great question, and it's one that the book acknowledges. It emphasizes that authenticity is key. The goal isn't to fake desire or manipulate him into doing what you want. It's about embracing your own sexuality and using it to create a deeper connection with your partner.
So it's about finding that balance between being strategic and being genuine.
Precisely. It's about understanding the power of physical intimacy and using it in a way that feels good for both of you.
Now, the book doesn't just focus on, manipulating a man's behavior. It also encourages women to focus on their own self-growth and reinvention.
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of constantly evolving and expanding your horizons, not just to keep him interested, but for your own personal fulfillment.
So it's not just about keeping him on his toes, but about becoming a more well-rounded and interesting person.
Exactly. The book argues that this kind of self-growth is inherently attractive and magnetic, drawing people in with its confidence and dynamism. It encourages women to pursue new career goals, take up hobbies, travel, and invest in their personal development.
It's almost like it's saying, don't just focus on attracting a man, focus on becoming the kind of woman that men are naturally drawn to.
Precisely. It's about cultivating your own inner strength and confidence, which ultimately makes you more attractive and desirable.
But isn't there a risk that, in focusing so much on self-improvement, you might lose sight of the importance of connecting with your partner on a deeper level?
That's a valid point. The book does emphasize the importance of balancing personal growth with nurturing the relationship. It suggests involving your partner in your journey of self-discovery, sharing your goals and aspirations, and supporting each other's growth.
So it's about finding a balance between individual growth and shared experiences.
Exactly. It's about creating a dynamic where both partners feel supported and empowered to become the best versions of themselves.
Okay, let's move on to another topic that the book delves into, conflict resolution.
Yeah.
It acknowledges that, even in the most perfectly managed relationships, there will inevitably be disagreements and moments of tension.
Right. And it offers some pretty specific advice on how to handle those situations. Remember that idea of using silence as a weapon that we discussed earlier? It comes into play here as well.
So instead of engaging in a heated argument, the book suggests staying calm and composed, allowing the silence to create a sense of discomfort that prompts him to reflect on his actions.
Exactly. It's about maintaining your composure and not letting your emotions get the better of you.
Right.
The book also emphasizes the importance of setting clear boundaries and not tolerating disrespectful behavior.
So it's about standing your ground and making it clear that you won't be treated poorly.
Absolutely. It's about knowing your worth and not settling for less than you deserve.
But what if the conflict escalates? What if he doesn't respond to the silent treatment or continues to push your buttons?
Well, the book suggests that in extreme cases, it might be necessary to walk away from the situation temporarily.
Oh.
This isn't about giving him the silent treatment, but rather about removing yourself from a toxic environment to allow both parties to cool down and reassess the situation.
So it's about prioritizing your own well-being and not engaging in a destructive cycle of conflict.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that sometimes the best way to resolve a conflict is to take a step back and approach it from a calmer, more rational perspective.
The book then goes a step further, suggesting that you can actually turn his resistance into submission, using his rebellion as an opportunity to reassert your dominance.
It sounds a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it? But the book argues that by remaining calm and assertive in the face of his challenges, you demonstrate your strength and resilience.
So it's about showing him that you're not easily rattled and that you're in control of your emotions.
Exactly. The book even suggests using positive reinforcement when he behaves the way you want, almost like training a pet.
Oh, wow.
Give him praise and affection when he complies, and he'll be more likely to repeat that behavior.
That's a pretty bold approach, but I can see how it might be effective, especially with someone who's prone to testing boundaries.
It's definitely not for everyone.
Yeah.
But it highlights the book's central theme, using strategic thinking and a deep understanding of male psychology to navigate relationships successfully.
Now, the book acknowledges that there will be times when a man's rebellion escalates, when he really digs his heels in and refuses to back down.
And in those situations, it offers advice on how to handle those more extreme forms of pushback.
Like?
Well, it emphasizes the importance of staying firm on your boundaries, even if it means walking away from the situation temporarily.
It's like reminding him that there are consequences to his actions, that you're not going to tolerate being disrespected or undermined.
Exactly. And sometimes that means creating a sense of distance to allow both parties to reassess the situation and decide whether the relationship is worth salvaging.
Right. It's about recognizing that your own well-being and peace of mind are paramount. You don't have to stay in a dynamic that's constantly draining or disrespectful.
Absolutely. Now, the book presents these moments of rebellion as opportunities,
Okay.
chances to reestablish your dominance and strengthen the power dynamic.
It's like a constant game of one-upmanship, using each conflict as a stepping stone to assert your control.
But it's important to consider whether this kind of approach is truly conducive to a healthy, sustainable relationship. Can a relationship built on these kinds of power struggles ever truly thrive?
Right. It's a question worth pondering, and it leads us into the final chapter of the book, which focuses on advanced tactics for creating, lasting influence.
This is where it goes beyond just manipulating a man's behavior in isolated situations.
Okay.
It's about embedding yourself in his life in a way that makes you seem indispensable.
The book calls this the art of total domination, which sounds pretty intense.
It's definitely a bold claim.
Yeah.
But at its core, it's about understanding a man's deepest desires, fears, and ambitions, and then positioning yourself as the key to fulfilling those needs.
It's almost like becoming this essential element in his life, the one person he can always rely on for validation, support, and even a sense of purpose.
Exactly. And the book provides some pretty specific techniques for achieving this level of influence.
Like,
Well, for instance, it talks about becoming his confidant, his advisor, the one person he always turns to for help and guidance.
okay, that makes sense. But wouldn't that require a lot of emotional labor on my part?
It definitely takes effort,
Yeah.
but the book argues that the rewards are worth it. By becoming his most trusted ally, you gain a level of influence that allows you to shape his decisions and actions in subtle but powerful ways.
So it's about becoming the power behind the throne, so to speak.
In a way, yes, but it's not about controlling him or manipulating him against his will. It's about understanding his needs and motivations and using that knowledge to guide him towards choices that benefit both of you.
Okay, I can see how that could be a powerful dynamic, but wouldn't it be exhausting to always be on, so to speak, to always be thinking about how to influence him?
That's a valid concern. And the book acknowledges that maintaining this level of influence requires a certain level of awareness and strategic thinking. It's not about constantly manipulating him or trying to control his every move. It's about being attuned to his needs and desires and using your knowledge of his personality to gently nudge him in the right direction.
So it's about being more of a guide than a puppet master.
Exactly. It's about using your influence to help him become the best version of himself while also ensuring that your own needs are met in the relationship.
That makes sense. But what about the practical aspects of maintaining this kind of influence? The book mentions something about creating a sense of dependency. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. The book suggests subtly positioning yourself as the solution to his problems, the one person he can always rely on for support and guidance. It's not about making him helpless or dependent on you in an unhealthy way. It's about becoming his go-to person, the one he trusts to help him navigate life's challenges.
So it's about becoming his rock, his anchor in the storm.
Exactly. And the book argues that by becoming his most trusted ally, you gain a level of influence that allows you to subtly shape his decisions and actions in a way that benefits both of you.
Okay, I can see how that could be a powerful dynamic. But wouldn't it be easy to cross the line into manipulation? Where do you draw the line between being supportive and being controlling?
That's a great question, and it's one that the book addresses directly. It emphasizes the importance of respecting his autonomy and not trying to force him to do anything he doesn't want to do. It's about using your influence wisely and ethically, always keeping his best interests at heart.
So it's about using your knowledge of him to empower him, not to control him.
Precisely, it's about helping him become the best version of himself while also ensuring that your own needs are met in the relationship.
Now, the book also talks about the importance of maintaining the illusion of equality in the relationship, even when you're the one subtly pulling the strings.
Right. It emphasizes making him feel like he's still in control, even when you're, cleverly guiding his decisions and actions.
The book even suggests sharing in decision-making, allowing him to think he's calling the shots while you skillfully steer the process toward your desired outcome.
It's a delicate balancing act, for sure. And it requires a certain level of finesse and emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the book's advice on handling different types of men, mannering long-term relationships, navigating moments of rebellion, and even creating, lasting influence.
It's a lot to process. And before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I think it's important to pause and reflect on what we've discussed so far.
Right, because this book is packed with provocative ideas and strategies that are sure to spark debate.
Exactly. And we want to hear from you. What are your initial reactions to the book's advice? What stood out to you the most? We'll be back in a moment to wrap up our deep dive into Master the Game.
All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Master the Game. We've been exploring some, pretty intense concepts, right? About power, manipulation, influence in relationships, But before we wrap things up, I think there's one more fascinating aspect of this book that we need to discuss. The importance of self-reinvention.
Yeah, the book argues that true mastery isn't just about understanding and influencing men.
Right.
It's about, constantly evolving, becoming the best version of yourself.
Okay.
And it encourages women to embrace a mindset of continuous growth, self-improvement.
So it's not just about keeping him on his toes, but also about becoming a more, well-rounded and fascinating individual.
Precisely. It suggests pursuing new career goals, exploring hobbies, traveling, and investing in, personal development. The book argues that this journey of self-discovery, it makes you more confident, attractive, and ultimately, more desirable to a partner.
It's almost like it's saying, don't just try to attract a man, focus on becoming the kind of woman that men are naturally drawn to.
Exactly. It's about cultivating your own inner strength, independence, and self-assurance.
Okay, but what about the idea that, like, men are intimidated by strong, successful women? Doesn't that kind of contradict this whole approach?
The book actually addresses that head on.
Okay.
It argues that true confidence is magnetic, and that men who are truly secure in themselves won't be intimidated by a woman who knows her worth.
Okay.
In fact, they'll be drawn to her strength and ambition.
So it's about finding a partner who's, like, on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Someone who appreciates and supports your desire for growth and self-improvement.
Absolutely. The book emphasizes the importance of choosing partners wisely, seeking out men who are confident, supportive, and who share your values.
Now, the book concludes with this, like, powerful message about embracing a life of power, control, and unapologetic dominance.
Yes, it encourages women to step into their power and shape their lives on their own terms, both within their relationships and in all other aspects of their lives.
It's like a call to action, right?
Yeah,
To, embrace your full potential and become the master of your own destiny.
exactly. It emphasizes that true power comes from within, from like self-awareness, emotional intelligence, a deep understanding of your own desires and motivations.
So it's not about manipulating others or controlling their behavior, but rather about, like, mastering yourself and using that knowledge to navigate the world with confidence and purpose.
Precisely. The book provides a final playbook
Okay.
with like mantras and specific strategies for different relationship scenarios, emphasizing the importance of, adaptability and strategic thinking.
It's like a cheat sheet for navigating the complexities of love and power, encouraging women to become savvy players in the game of relationships.
That's one way to look at it. But I think it's important to remember that the book's ultimate message is one of empowerment.
Yeah.
It's about encouraging women to take control of their lives, to set clear boundaries, and to choose partners who respect and value them.
So whether you agree with, like, every single tactic outlined in the book or not, it's a thought-provoking exploration of, power dynamics and relationship strategies, right?
Absolutely. It challenges conventional thinking and encourages us to examine our own beliefs about love, power, and the delicate balance of influence in our relationships.
Well, there you have it. That wraps up our deep dive into Master the Game. I mean, it's been a wild ride, exploring everything from decoding the male ego to mastering the art of self-reinvention. We hope you found this journey, as insightful and thought-provoking as we did.
Remember, knowledge is power, but it's how you choose to use that power that truly defines you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. What are your takeaways from this book? What stood out to you the most? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.